Guys, on this episode of the Gametime Guru podcast, which is being presented by 208 Printing, we get to speak to a college athlete who competes in lacrosse. I have a huge amount of respect for him. He's going to teach us about patience, hard work, dedication, perseverance, leadership, and much more. The interview is an awesome one. You're going to also hear about the decisions he had to make when the coronavirus impacted his senior season. So buckle up, stay tuned. If you're a parent, a coach, or an athlete aspiring to compete at the next level, you do not want to miss this interview. Our guest is going to be giving you some total knowledge bombs, and you can't miss it. This is the Gametime Guru.
What time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everyone? Welcome out to the Gametime Guru podcast. Once again, I am your host, Shane Larson. Excited to be here with you for another interview here on the show. Super exciting. You guys heard it in the interview. This is an awesome opportunity for me to kind of talk to you guys about the sport of lacrosse, but even deeper than that, because I'm going to talk to you about how sports kind of like bring these connections with different individuals. And today on the show, I'm bringing on Dami Ashaye, and he is a senior over at the College of Idaho, who we referenced this school 2 times on the podcast. One just a few weeks ago with head coach Colby Blaine from the basketball program. And then a few years back, we had one of the assistant coaches over at the lacrosse program of College of Idaho, Marcel, who joined the show. And now we get to hear from a player over there. Dami, thanks so much for joining the show, man.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, brother. We're excited to have you on, man. And you're representing the Guru Vision t-shirt, showing some support of the show,
sir.
Which I greatly appreciate.
Right here. Get your merch. Get your merch.
Thank you for the shout out. I did not ask him to do that, just so everybody knows. So he's representing the Guru Vision t-shirts. If you guys want one, go to thegametimeguru.com/Guru Vision. You can get your t-shirts there and represent and support the show. So the funny thing is we're going to be talking about lacrosse, but Dami, I actually first met you. It wasn't in lacrosse because I don't play lacrosse. It was on the basketball court. And this is where I actually first connected. Yeah. That's why I wanted to share this with the audience, how sports can bring people together and can connect people. I'm playing in a basketball tournament, 3-on-3 here in Boise. There's a tournament called Bam Jam. And we're in the bracket, getting towards the end of the bracket. So I'm in the single elimination phase where if we lose, we're in the loser side of things. We had to work our way up to the championship. So essentially it was win or go home. And one of our players goes down the game before, so we're stuck playing Dami and his team. And, it's a bunch of guys my age or older, like we're in our 30s, and we're playing these young guns. And we're thinking, okay, we're good because, Dami's over here. He's like 6 foot, athletic build, but I'm like, okay, we might be able to shoot over him. We should be okay. Like, we might lack some speed. I'm not even joking you, dude. To this day, I still remember it. That was my last game in Bam Jam, by the way. I haven't ever played another one since. We got torched by you guys. And I remember you specifically, I'm not even kidding you. You specifically froze me 3 times. And one of which was a drive where you almost did like a little hop step Euro fake pass, froze me, and then got to the bucket where everybody was like, ooh, like you crossed me and then froze me. And then I couldn't stick. And then you actually ended up hitting the game winning shot. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, dude, how unbelievably athletic you were. For being what I would say was like a shorter guy. You were super athletic, could get to the basket, could finish around the rim, and could shoot a jumper. And I was like, dang, this guy is like super athletic. Then I came to, get to know you a little bit better and just kind of like following your story and seeing that you're like legitimately a good like lacrosse player at a reputable school. So Dami, do you remember any of that basketball like game at all by chance?
I don't remember like singular plays, but I definitely remember like meeting you and playing you guys. And we were kind of game planning for you guys because you guys were a lot bigger than us. So we were like, we got to hit shots. That was already, we got to defend well and we got to hit shots. So I remember going into that, thinking that idea, but I definitely remember meeting you that whole day, but I don't remember any of those plays. So thank you. But
Dude, it's just crazy going back in time. And you're a crazy good athlete. And that's where I kind of want to segue into is your athletic journey before you even started getting into the sport of lacrosse. I mean, obviously you got a little bit of a background in basketball. Talk to us about, your upbringing, where you're from, and kind of what sports you played when you were at a younger age.
Absolutely. So my family is originally from Nigeria, but I was born here, and from the UK as well. So it was always soccer, soccer, soccer growing up. And so I played soccer for about 13 years. I got really good at soccer, but somewhere along the line around seventh or eighth grade, I moved to this school called Ambrose here in the Valley. And that's when I picked up basketball and kind of met my best friends from high school. So then, and like my best friends in the valley, we always used to go to the local YMCA's and play and just shoot and play every day. So I played basketball from sixth, well, till I graduated. But somewhere along the line, I think it was my sophomore year, one of my best friends on the basketball team was like, "Hey man, come and try out and play lacrosse." Because on the court, I was always super physical and I liked the physical aspect of it. And on the soccer field too, I was always like more physical than a lot of soccer players would be. So he's like, "Come out, you can use your body, all of that stuff." And I mean, it took him a while to kind of get me to do it. Um, and when I first came out to play, I hated it. I hated it. I was like, bro, I'm not playing this.
Why
I'm
did you
just
hate it?
sticking to basketball.
Why'd you hate it?
Cause of the extension of the body. Like it felt like there was something outside of my control, you know what I mean? So I was not a fan of it. Um, and so he's like, give it some time. So I remember I played sophomore, junior, senior year, and that senior year we won our school's first ever basketball state championship. And so I was all about basketball that year, really, because we were locked in. We're like, hey, it's our last ride. The whole team were seniors that had played basketball together since like seventh grade. And so I was really locked into basketball, but at the same time, I was getting more and more intrigued with lacrosse because it was almost basketball plus soccer together.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, and my cousin and family friends played football a lot. Um, and so, even that aspect of football that I never got to play football like them, but I could do that in lacrosse. So I fell in love with it. Our lacrosse team went to the state ship junior year, first ever appearance, but we lost. And so that journey was probably one of my most fun sports experiences. So after that, and then riding into winning the state ship, like I had a decision of whether I wanted to pursue basketball or lacrosse. And talking to the head coach Matt Gear, an assistant coach Marcel, as you know him, I took the chance, and I don't regret it at all.
I think that's awesome, man. Did you have any offers for basketball coming out of high school, though? Were people looking at you, like even community colleges or anything like that? Did you have some spots that you could have potentially got to?
So I had community college looks, but I had more and better lacrosse looks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So where there was 4 years offering scholarships, it was like JUCOs with walk-ons or like, yeah, you can come try it out. So I was just never really into that.
Totally. Okay. Totally makes sense. And just for the record, for those who didn't hear my interview with either Marcel or even Colby Blaine talking about the College of Idaho, it's a very, very good school, especially academically. So the fact that you like made that decision to go there, like obviously for your future as well, I'm sure that had a part in your decision making. Like it's a very good decision. If you had that opportunity to go there, I mean, we talked about the expenses of College of Idaho and how it is typically it's a pretty spendy school, but you get what you pay for is what Colby Blaine had mentioned. And sometimes when you're playing sports, certain things offset costs. You get certain grants here and there and whatever, there's a lot of things that play into fact, but like you do get what you pay for when it comes to the education. Overall, are you pretty, satisfied with your decision to go to the College of Idaho, which is this small school in Caldwell, Idaho of all places?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially applying to med school this year. Once you start actually plugging in like stuff you've done, the fact that everyone graduates with at least one major and three minors. Now I'll have two majors and three minors, which is just kind of unheard of. Like once you start plugging that stuff in, community service projects, even the teams do community service. Each team does community service both in the school and outside of the school. So once you start really plugging in your journey and what you've done, you start to see what you paid for, as Coach Colby would say. So it was definitely worth it.
That's awesome. You know what? I want to touch base on that real quick because the college experience is cool because sports can bring you like into way more than just sports. It's bringing you this whole college experience, and like college is much more than just going to a classroom and getting your degree. Like there's a lot that goes along with it. And it looks like the College of Idaho, especially like from not only the academic side of things, but the athletic side of things, are giving you these opportunities. You just mentioned like community service. You put that on a resume, that looks good. You put that on your LinkedIn profile, that looks good. These are the opportunities they are providing you while you're there, when you might not even appreciate them or really respect them until you, like you said, you're starting to put them all
Absolutely.
together. Like, oh, darn. Okay. Like not everybody does that. Just as an FYI, not all schools do that. To that extent. So College of Idaho is definitely a very reputable school, very credible school, and people know who they are. Now on the lacrosse side of things, so Dom, we got to hear your background, playing some basketball, your athletic soccer, of course, coming up, getting into basketball and then into lacrosse. So lacrosse seems like it was the latest sport that you got into, but it's actually the most, that's the one that you're taking the reins of right now. You get into the College of Idaho. What was the transition like going from the high school level of lacrosse to the collegiate level? And let's just be like to explain the setting of high school. Ambrose was a smaller school, so I'm curious, like the competition level from going from your school in high school to the collegiate level. And for those who don't remember, College of Idaho has a solid lacrosse program and they play some solid competition. So I'm just curious what the transition was like for an athlete.
The transition was tough. That first year was tough, but thankfully it was just tough in the skill category, which sometimes it's like that's what you expect with a freshman coming in. Not that the skill or not that the talent isn't there, but I always say that skill is talent developed. So I needed time to develop the talent which I had, and so that part of it was tough. But as far as the team, great guys. They all brought me in. Like our two-time All-American senior was always in there helping me in the weight room, helping me on the field. So that aspect of it was very easy. And also what helped me is I was always a late bloomer. So I didn't hit my growth spurt athletically or physically until like my senior summer and freshman, like halfway through the year. So after that, like I was like, oh yeah. I was probably one of the more athletic guys on our team after that. And I still have been, which has definitely helped me. But that's part of the reason I was always undersized. I was always like unathletic sort of. So once I hit that athletic growth spurt and the coaches and the team were helping me to develop my my talent, by my sophomore year, I was super comfortable. But that freshman year was a little bit harder to get used to because we had really good teams.
Did you have to, exert a lot of patience in that regard? Because I too was a late bloomer. I graduated high school when I was 17. I was a young 17 as well.
Yeah.
And I always tell people I was 16 years old as a senior for a week. So like when I was in high school, I was younger, and I didn't realize how impactful that could be until I got older. And I'm like, oh yeah, like the difference between me from 17 to like even 18, 19 was just massive difference. I see the difference in what my body was able to do. I was a late bloomer. Did you have to exert a lot of patience there? Like realize like, okay, I'm still like young. I'm still trying to mature. My body's just different than everybody else's. Like not everyone's bodies are the same. And what would you tell other people, like other athletes coming up through high school who might be like, I have no shot at going to the next level of this or that because I'm just not the same build. I'm not the same athleticism. I don't have the same athleticism. What would you tell them?
It's funny you say that because we were in the same exact position. I remember I was in college for almost half the semester, a 17-year-old. Like I had to get my parents to sign waivers for me to do this and that, and everyone else was signing it themselves. So it's funny you say that. And that was always in my mind in high school. Like, what if I didn't, because I ended up skipping a grade. So it was always like, what if I didn't skip a grade? What if I stayed, blah, 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 for my athletic career? And for younger kids in our same situation, I would say that at the same time you think that it's a curse, it can be a blessing. And I say that because instead of, because I've seen so many athletes in soccer, basketball, lacrosse, and football that they've always been the big guys since like eighth grade physically.
Right.
And so they're always relying on their athleticism, let's say, to get to the cup, go dunk, all that. So you don't really develop your skills, ball handling, shooting, passing. So when you're a young kid and you're shorter than everyone or don't quite have the athleticism yet, you can work on all the little things. You know what I mean? You can work on every little thing. That's what I'd say. Get all the fundamentals right. And by the time you do hit your growth spurt, all of a sudden you're a completely different player who can do the same things as everyone else can. But now guess who's been working on their skills? So that's the advice I would give anyone else that was in our position. Just put your head down, keep working on the little things, keep working on the fundamentals. And then, once you hit your growth spurt, you'll be thankful for it.
100%, man. I appreciate you actually touching base on that, because there are a lot of people who listen to this show that I know are in that same boat, because I've touched base on that before in different episodes, and I know people have like reached out and been like, oh man, like I'm in the same boat. So thank you for that. That's awesome, man. So you get into your freshman year was in 2017, it looks like, as we're going through your playing career. 2016, 17, is that correct?
Yeah.
So academically, it looks like it was probably 16, but your season starts in the spring of 17, and
absolutely.
You get I want to touch base on. Okay, you said it was like a tougher transition. You're starting to learn the game. You're starting to come into your body. And you're starting to put in the work, but you're still working. You get into the game. Your very first time ever getting into a collegiate lacrosse game. What was the feeling? What did you feel like? Did you have any jitters, or did you feel like you were well prepared and it was just kind of like another day at the office?
I feel like I was well prepared, but I had those natural like I'm here jitters, like wow, like it's really happening. So and I think my first game I got into a close game in the second half because like some of our guys were tired. So it was like, okay, like it I probably went into it with the raw mentality instead of being like it was like, don't mess up, Dami. You know what I mean? Like, just make the right pass, play the right defense, don't mess up. So that's the kind of jitter I had. But I would say after a minute and kind of feeling like, yeah, it's a little more fast paced, but I was prepared for this in practice. All of that, I got really excited, and I was comfortable and confident.
That's good, man. I mean, I always wonder, like, I always try to put it back. I didn't play at the collegiate level for any like team sports. I boxed when I was in college.
Oh, that's cool.
But I didn't get to play in the team sport thing. But I just know when I was in high school and stuff, just like the feelings like, oh, your first varsity game. It's always like those nerves.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's similar to what you're saying, but it's not to that extent. That's why I wanted to ask, because not everybody gets to play at the collegiate level. So you get in there, you're prepared. Talk to us about that freshman. You guys were phenomenal your freshman year. Like your team was solid. So talk to us about what your overall experience was in year one.
So I'll say this. I was all throughout my sports career, I was blessed to be on winning teams and winning programs. So one thing I definitely like, so I've always been a very driven guy and a very competitive guy, and I hate losing. I love winning. As soon as that I saw that first game, and as soon as I saw our team like in practices before those first games and that whole season, I was like, yeah, it's happening all over again. Great culture, great teammates, great coaches, great system. And that freshman year, I think we went undefeated my freshman year up until the conference championship. And I think we did end up dropping the conference championship, but which was tough. But at least I knew that we're gonna be good. I knew we were gonna be good my whole stay there, all 4 years. So it was exciting. We were phenomenal, and it's just cool that we've gone even better. It's been an upward scale.
That's so crazy, man. And you know, it it's hard to like say, oh well, there's some moral victories. Like everybody who's played in sports or competed at some level, like understand like you don't want to lose.
Yeah.
You don't like losing. So even if you have like this phenomenal season, you lose later on in like a tournament, or you're going for your ultimate goal is to win a championship, and you lose. But I do think that there are a lot of lessons that you can learn. So like while I don't believe in moral victories, I kind of do. I kind of think there's a lot that you can learn. You can come out of it optimistic, which you guys did because you kept that winning mentality. You kept that culture. That's not always normal in a program, in any program at any level. Like you have to build a winning culture, which you obviously just said that you came into it and you felt like you knew what it was like. You've been part of winning cultures and you knew how to contribute to that. And they stayed that way. Some people don't know how to have that sustainable success, right? They get to that top level. Nick Saban talks about it a lot, about how he's taken the Alabama football team to the top level in college football and has sustained excellence. There's a difference between just getting to the excellent mark and then sustaining that excellence. What do you think it's been like? What's some of the contributing factors in your guys' sustained excellence, getting to the top and still being able to compete at that highest level?
I would say leadership out of our teammates and accountability, because no matter what, even though the coaches do, the coaches make the backbone, if that makes sense. The coaches make the backbone, and that's what you lean on. But if the players aren't there, kind of holding each other accountable, making each practice game like, on and off the field accountability is a big thing too, because obviously college is college. Off the field accountability is big because you're a winning program off the field as well. That means getting the grades, doing the right things, just being focused, lifting, and it goes on and on. So I would say the biggest thing that I've seen in all teams, honestly, is on winning cultures, it's the players, and the players will say it too. It's the player accountability with that coaching backbone.
I love that, man. That's super insightful. As a leader yourself, I was reading some articles on you, Dami, and even up to last season, before the season, was all weird because of COVID, but talking about the leadership, because what did he say? Your selflessness, or what was it? Selflessness. Talk to us about how you lead on the field as a player.
I would like to say I'm a lead by example guy, but because I have the ability to, I would say, relate to a lot of people, when I need to, I can lead like by what I'm seeing, if that makes sense. So every time I'm on the field, I'm making sure that I'm outworking my team and the other team. If I have to be the hardest worker, I'm the one, hustling for the ground balls. I'm the one sprinting back on transition defense. You know what I mean? I have to make sure that I'm that guy, because people naturally lead by example, or follow by people's examples rather. So if I'm not going to be that guy, I don't want to put that on someone else, if that makes sense. And then from there, what I'm saying just comes from experience and how the older guys kind of helped me. So, the younger guys, and I have a great relationship with the guys my age. So the same way they can tell me, hey, bro, you're messing up right here. Like you missed this defensive slide, or you were supposed to be the 2-man, yada, yada, yada. I can do that right back. And that's a lovely thing to have in a team. That's a winning culture right there, without any hurt feelings. And the younger guys, it's like, hey, look, right there, instead of doing that, instead of doing a drop step right there, pinch into them, slide back, trust your defense, just that type of talk, and do it in a respectful, but, like, hey, look, let's go type of way. So I would say those are the two ways I've been able to lead, by example and just by communication.
I think that's super effective, man. Because everybody learns differently, and I think you can take that skill set of leadership and that type of leadership that you just mentioned, just the way that you communicate with your teammates and the way that you lead by example with your teammates, that can go to the work field, right? That's why I always say that, like, sports teach you so many life lessons. There's so many things I learned on the basketball court or in the boxing ring or on the football field that I've taken into my leadership roles in my career path that I've gone outside of sports. And people think that's crazy, but it's not. Like, you can take those skill sets and literally implement them directly into your career path. And so that's awesome to hear you talk about leadership, because that's a quality and a skill set that not everybody has. And that's okay. You can't have a ton of Michael Jordans out there in the workforce, or else you won't be able to, like, everyone will have to be a manager or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but that there is an acquired skill set that it takes. And it sounds like you've already got that, and you've learned a lot of that through sports. It's awesome, man. As we go into your sophomore year, if I'm not mistaken, this is the year where you guys won it, is it not? Or was it a different year? I want to say it was in your sophomore year. Yeah. So talk to us about that. You go out your freshman year, you guys had a ton of success, ended up falling short just near the end, but took that and rode with that momentum and that optimism. Talk to us about your sophomore year and how that all played out.
So the sophomore year journey was an interesting one, because freshman year, so we graduated a bunch of seniors that had been there all 4 years. So I was like, hey, we got to reestablish, not only do we have to reestablish what we have, but let's take the next step. And so there was that struggle. Also, freshman year, I would say we felt like we were the guys. Undefeated season, like, yeah, we lost in the shit by a couple goals. That hurts, and we need that shit. But we thought we were just gonna run through the regular season again, and just be totally okay. But we had some team problems. We had people that weren't able to play, and you know how that goes. Once you lose people, and the chemistry is kind of discombobulated a little bit. That changes everything quick. And so I remember we went on a California road trip. I think at this point we were 3-0 or whatever, and we were feeling really good. We went on a California road trip to play UC Davis and UC Santa Cruz, I think. And we dropped both games. And we went back sad, but looking back at it after the year, that was the best thing that happened to us that year. Because we got right back to work. Like, the next day after the game, we got right back to work. We were focused. We're like, hey, we're not going to win anything if we have this attitude, if we're not together. And so after that rough start, I think we went undefeated for the rest of the year. And then we won in the conference championship. Our 3-time All-American Nick Gazzetti hit a game winner after a tough, grueling game. And that moment, that was easily I think that was my second favorite sports moment that I've been in. And we brought home our first ever conference championship and got the ticket to nationals that year. So we were ecstatic.
That's so cool, man. Talk to us about the nationals experience. You're now at the highest stage. You've gotten past that. How do you still, like, I guess the question I'm trying to ask here is, like, you hear it from LeBron James, who's been to the NBA finals multiple times, right, in his career. And he talks about, like, the Eastern Conference finals. He would always win that. Like, they'd always get through the East. Now they just got through the West. And he would always talk about, like, we want to celebrate this and understand what it's been. We worked hard for this, but our ultimate goal is this. So they'd have to, like, celebrate and then reset their mind to get, stay motivated for the finals. So talk to me about that as you win your conference championship. You guys are stoked. It's awesome. It's one you mentioned it was your second favorite sports memory. Then how do you, as you get prepared for the next stage, how do you guys get yourselves motivated to, like, okay, now it's game time still?
I think it was just kind of having a short memory, but also, and we all know this, I think we did a poor job about it the first time. Because that was our first ever conference championship and our first ever entry to nationals. So we were excited about the conference championship a little bit too long. Once we started game planning, it was like, all right, let's do our best instead of let's win it. Just because everything was brand new. So, but I would say that the next year, and I'm sure we're going to get into that, that's when we really locked in. But that year was sophomore year was great for the experience and learning how to do exactly what LeBron said, because that's something you can't really learn unless you've been there before, if that makes sense. Because it's not like just a freshman or just a sophomore, just the juniors hadn't experienced that. Nobody on the team had experienced, winning the conference championship and then going right to nationals literally a week or two after. So yeah, learning experience for sure. And that's what champions do, is right there, that short memory.
That's so crazy, man. Like it's hard to like imagine it from someone who's never been there. So that's why I appreciate talking to you about it. Was the competition at nationals when the first time, like just getting out there, were you nervous, or did you feel like athletically your school, your team could match with anybody in the country essentially?
Yeah, so definitely athletically and skill wise, I felt great. We all felt great. What it came down to, and also we were like, I think we might have been the last seed that year in nationals. So we were playing the number 1 seed, who I think went on to the national championship that year. But what it came down to was depth. And you always hear that in all sorts of teams. Depth wins championships, because usually once you get to those levels, NBA playoffs, any playoff run of any sort, it's the depth that's going to get you there. Because usually your starters and maybe like 3 or 4 deep, you're good if you're a playoff team. It's having 10 guys off the bench. Lacrosse wise, usually in basketball, it's 3 or 4. It's having 10 guys off the bench that are just as good as the starters. You know what I mean? Or at least have had enough experience to plug in those roles. That's a championship team. So we go out there, I think we might have been a roster of like 28, where we went out there, dudes have 40 players on their team.
Goodness.
And like 15 of those guys are sitting there thinking like, we're not going to play, but they're all ready. Every single one's ready, and they've all been practiced. So seeing how they work as a well-oiled machine with a deep bench, I think that's the biggest separator at stages like that.
Dude, it's so cool. Like I'm trying to picture it in my head, just being like in your situation, as a former athlete myself, and just kind of like imagining these lessons that you're learning. You're 2 years deep into your collegiate career now. You've experienced this. You've gotten one championship with an ultimate goal of a higher accomplishment, and you've made it up another step. We're going into junior year now. How did you guys keep that same energy, that same momentum, and all those? And how did you implement those lessons? And how did that junior year go for you?
Yeah, junior year, we're like, this is our year. Nobody's stopping us. We learned from our mistakes sophomore year. We weren't too cocky. We had humble confidence, as my old basketball coach always used to say, humble confidence. We're like, we're going to win, but we're not too cocky about it. We're just confident in our ability, humble confidence. And then junior year, we learned that, look, you got to, as a champions have short memories, both with losses and wins. And so having that from freshman to sophomore year, rather, by my junior year, we're like, yep, we got it. We got this stud D1 lacrosse transfer from Wagner, playing at the face-off position. We had some great transfers. And then we had our core guys that had really been there the whole time. So, and some great freshmen. And so we were deep, I would say 2 or 3 at every position, which is, you love to hear that. So we were very confident. Junior year, I think we went undefeated that year. and we played some great competition. We had a top 10 team at home, beat them by like 10 or something like that. And so, and this was the year that we were nationally ranked, I want to say top 5, but at least top 7. And that was the first time ever. That was unheard of for our program. And so that's when we realized, look, we're just as good as anybody else. You know what I mean? And so we kind of run through the regular season, win the conference championship, and then we're like, we don't even care about this. You know what I mean? That's when I knew this team was that junior team was really special, and that our program was just going up from there. Because you win the conference championship, you're excited for that day, maybe that night, and then the next morning it's like, let's get ready to rumble, guys. Like, forget about that. We're trying to win the national championship. And so going into nationals, we went in with a lot of confidence. And I think we went in a higher seed. And yeah, it was great from there. It was a great experience.
So, man, it's so cool because like the way that your whole story for your career and just kind of like knowing how it was, and now you guys are ranked and you got this humble confidence, if you will. I always talk about in sports for the quote unquote underdogs. Like if you prepare properly, you don't, like a lot of football teams, for example, they don't have the brand name. Like Boise State was an example, like, cause we're here out of the Treasure Valley of Idaho. And like, and they had, when they play the bigger schools, like originally it was like Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl in 2007 and the crazy Statue of Liberty play and all that stuff. Everyone was scared to play in Oklahoma, but why are you scared? Oh, because their fan base has all this culture and they have all this stuff and they have this brand behind them, this Oklahoma brand. And oftentimes players get like that. That's a psychological factor. But when you get on the field, you realize like, oh no, like we play the same sport they do. We've been lacing up our shoes the same way they do. We've been putting on the same pads they put on. We know how to play the sport the same way they know how to play sport. It's time to go. Like we've been preparing just the same way they have. And I think that's where like it's kind of reminding me of that when you're talking about your humble confidence. You guys are starting to put stuff together. As you get into nationals, talk about the energy at the school as well. I want to know about the energy at the school because we obviously know that like basketball, now they've implemented football over at the College of Idaho again, and they start to get good fan bases out there to support the teams because it's a smaller school and the community rallies behind them. What were the games like for you guys? Or did you guys get anybody like at the schools coming to watch your games in the community? What was it like?
Yeah, so that was another really cool thing because lacrosse is more of an East Coast sport, and it's making its way out. That was probably the coolest part about it, was seeing kind of the college back us, because freshman year it was usually like, parents and, some random stragglers that came to watch, like friends. Sophomore year it increased, and then by our junior year it was like, okay, like, some of our friends on the football team were coming, taking time out of their day. A lot of the athletes support each other lovely on our campus. But then we had, friends from classes, we had teachers coming out. And so it was awesome to see that development and that backing as the team got better and better and made more noise. It was awesome to see, teachers would ask us like, oh, how'd the game go in class? Or are you guys traveling this weekend? Yada, yada, yada. They were really involved in it. I've had some long conversations with a couple of my professors just about like, lacrosse and my story, just because they're interested and they really supported us. So that was one of the coolest parts of our story so far.
Man, yeah, you're starting to get the community backing, the college backing, and like the energy. There's a difference when you got that energy behind you. I think that's awesome, man. And you guys were like, I mean, that's a cultural thing at the school, and you guys were a major part of that. Like you said, from your freshman year, now you're into your junior year at that point, and you were a major part of that shift in culture. That's awesome, man. So you get into nationals junior year. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So it was lovely. So we you get on the field, and instead of feeling like the previous year, like, wow, these guys are good, we got on and we're like, we're better. Like, humbly and confidently we're the best team here, and that's so phenomenal to have that as a team, as a program. So the first game we won pretty easily. We were up a lot in the second half. We kind of let them come back, but then we closed the game out. There was some some arguing, some chirping, but it was smooth sailing. So we're on the next round. And I think this game we played Grand Valley, GVSU, Grand Valley State University, and they were ranked higher than us. And those East Coast schools in our league, because it is an East Coast school, and even the people that analyze the game and whatnot, like you always see, matchup by matchup, the schools, their predictions of who are going to win, et cetera, et cetera. They were all sleeping on us. Everybody was sleeping on us. They said West Coast can't play lacrosse. They won't be able to keep up with the East Coast's physicality. All of this just noise. And so we're like, don't worry about the noise. Play your game, play your game, play your game. I remember we get on the field against Grand Valley, and those guys start barking. They're like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like in our faces, like, oh, they're not ready for it. They don't want it. They don't want it. And I just remember we looked at each other and we just started laughing. And that's when I knew we were going to win the game. Because I was a little worried that, especially some of the younger guys might be like, they're kind of, they're dogs, they're getting it. We just all started laughing. And that game was one of the most bizarre games I've ever had, because there was a storm, and in lacrosse, because we hold metal poles, if there's like any sort of storm or lightning warning, you have to do a little rain delay or whatnot just to make sure everyone's safe. So that game probably lasted I want to say like 3 hours, because we got to like halfway through the first half and there was the rain delay. We had to wait. Then it happened again. And so momentum was just switching for each team. So I was like, dang, like this is really, at this point, it's whoever's the more focused team. So I kid you not, we started this game, it was light outside. And then by the time we were done, it was dark and it was raining, and they put the headlights on. So it was one of the most scenic games I've ever been in. Rain everywhere, the lights, you could see we had gold helmets that year. So our helmets were just shining in the light, everything like that. Very physical, tough game that ended in the fourth quarter. And we came together. We finished the game and we headed towards the semifinals. And that was one of the best. That was the best win I've ever been a part of, because it took so much grit, so much, intelligence, even so much intelligence of the game, so much focus and togetherness, unity. It showed that our team, these guys were special. So that was awesome.
That's crazy, dude. I'm like getting nervous for you, like while you're talking about the
Yeah,
whole thing. Like, that's what I like about that, is hearing the stories, man, and the barking, dude, and just like the antics pre-game, and you're like, okay, we got this. Like we're good. That's so dope, man. Going into the semifinals, you guys had already kind of gotten past this big matchup with Grand Valley. Like this, okay, now you've gotten that. You kind of proved a lot of people wrong already. The whole season you proved people wrong, basically just, exceeding expectations. We've talked about the energy behind the school. Everything's going well. You guys are now in the semifinals doing your thing. Like you're making your way through the tournament, and share it with us. Share what happened.
So this team we played was kind of the brand name team. In football, you have your Alabamas, you have your Georgias, et cetera. In basketball, you have Duke, North Carolina, all that. This team is the powerhouse. They won it a ton of times. We're literally the new guys on the block. No one really knows about us. St. Thomas, they're St. Thomas University. And so that game was a lot of fun. But we didn't quite get the result we wanted. But we fought to the end. I think we played a decent first half. We let it slip in the second half, but I mean, it happens. um, the that game was the game where it was like, okay, 1 through 25, these guys are dogs. And that was fun to see. Like, I love that. I'm smiling right now because I loved the competition, like knowing, okay, at any point, there's not one guy on the field that's not good. And we thought that way too. So it was great. A lot of trash talking, which was, I just laughed to trash talking. I don't know why. I just laugh. I don't even talk back really. So a lot of trash talking, all of that. And it was a really super fun game, even though we didn't quite get the result we wanted. But we had realized by the end of that tournament, because they went to the national championship. Obviously, they dropped it to Dayton on the other side of the bracket. But by the end of that tournament, we had made a name for ourselves as one of the best players, or one of the best teams. Sorry, in our league. So it was a good trip, and the way we had been inclining each year, we were going into the next year thinking it's over. It's over.
So crazy, dude. I mean, it's awesome to hear the story of like just how much you guys built up. And you go into 2020. This is your senior year, like formally your senior year, like of everything. And it's weird. Now I get to talk to a player who's kind of experienced it, like what was going on. And the season had just started. Talk to us about that when this global pandemic hits and it affected the sports world. Sorry. It affects the sports world. Obviously, it affects you guys. And we talk about that a lot. We talked about, how it affects people in March Madness and how bad we felt for the players that wouldn't be able to play in college basketball and a lot of collegiate athletes that all of a sudden their seasons got ended short and they couldn't do anything. Talk to us about how it affected you guys and what ended up happening going into this year after all the preparation and all that.
Yeah. It was hard. And real quick, I wanna say that as hard as it was for us, I feel so bad for our, and I'm sure Colby might have mentioned it, our CFI basketball team. One of my best friends, Jake Bruner, he was on the team for 4 years, hard worker, grit. We actually played each other in high school and then ended up being roommates. And he they were heartbroken because we really thought they were going to win a national championship. So I say that because it made it easier with the perspective that, all right, these guys were on their way to a national championship, already won a game or two in the national tournament, undefeated, so far in the playoffs. And so that I just want to shout them out and then use that to explain how we were about 3 games in. So it was kind of the other side of it where it was like, all right, we put all this work in, in the summer, off season, and during the season, and only got to play 3 games. And so that side of it was kind of the opposite because we weren't at the climax of it, but we didn't get to the middle. And the toughest part about it is the next weekend before we got shut down, before they're like, all right, the season's done, was the weekend we were going to really prove ourselves because I think we're number 5 or number 4 in the nation at that point, which was our highest ranking, and we were going to California to play 2 top 10 teams and 1 top 5 team, I think. So wow. If you go undefeated that weekend, it was going to be our hardest weekend ever. If you go undefeated that weekend, like, we would probably have been the front runners to win the whole national championship. And so our team was looking like a well-oiled machine. We beat everyone handily. We were deeper than we've ever been. And to hear it right before that weekend, I remember we went out to practice. Coach was like, just come to practice, leave your gear at home. And we just kind of had this talk, and we went bowling with each other and just kind of, stayed in fellowship with each other. But it hurt for sure.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine just like, but I do see the perspective of like you're looking at it from an optimistic side because you're on the other end of it, not the very end of your season. You're at the beginning. Granted, it still sucks because of all the hard
Yeah.
work that's gone into it and kind of have to shift things around. And before we started recording, Dami, you had mentioned kind of like what, from an athlete's perspective, because this was your senior year, what options were presented to you? So could you talk to us a little bit about that as a spring sport at the college, your senior year? What options were presented to you guys, and how did you go about that, and why did you go about that?
Yeah, so thankfully, the leagues, and the officials and those at our school that work with athletes and set these sort of things up were able to work out some sort of deal to give, not unlike what the NCAA I think did, give spring athletes one more year of eligibility due to the circumstances that the coronavirus put everybody in. And so it was a very tough decision, because on one end you're like, all right, well, like I can start my life and I can move on, graduate, and kind of do what I've planned on doing. But on the other end, as a competitor, and I know that meant everybody was happy to at least have the option. As a competitor, you're like, man, I don't want to miss out, because everyone would have been playing only 3 years. It's like, I don't want to miss out on my fourth year. I don't want to miss out on the ability to be part of something special. So it was a decision. I remember there was a deadline. There was a deadline on some random date before the school year ended. It was a decision I pondered, I think, until the very last second. Like I remember saying, I'm coming back at the very last second I could. And that's because I had to weigh the pros and cons, talk to my family, talk to my teammates, talk to my coaches, and then kind of, stay in reflection and talk to myself to see what I wanted to do. So it was a tough decision. But I know for sure I made the right choice, and I'm super glad they gave athletes the option, because it was heartbreaking thinking that we're done, you know.
Right. And that was the one thing I was like, dang it, dude. They kind of like had stripped some athletes, because of the timing of the sport. They had stripped them of their opportunity to choose. At least you guys had the opportunity to choose. And I think that's actually really cool. At least they give you that choice, and that's an adult decision you had to make. Like that's a big boy decision at
Absolutely.
that point, because like you mentioned, there's two sides to that. And it's kind of cool to see though that an athlete that's getting that chance to at least go back and be part of something like you mentioned. But Dami, I want to know, like, when the time comes, obviously we know what the ultimate goal is. You're going to prepare and hopefully, keep praying that things will get better so that you guys can actually compete in the season come spring and do
Yeah.
your thing and compete for a national championship. But when the day comes that lacrosse is over for the college realms, tell us where we expect to see Dami Ashaye in the next 5 years, because you got some big plans coming ahead, moving
Yes, sir.
forward in your life.
So Lord willing, everything goes right. I would say in the next 5 years, I would have graduated medical school. I just submitted my application for the fall 2021 semester. Right now, I'm really interested in psychiatry, but they always say it changes in med school, so we'll see where I go. So in the next 5 years, I would have been graduating medical school, hopefully. Getting ready to enter the workforce as a doctor and hopefully really affect people's lives for the better, change their lives through, the work of medicine. That's my plan.
Heck yeah, man. We'll be rooting for you for that too. Last
Thank
question
you,
I
man.
got for you, Dami, is what would you say the biggest lesson sports, in all sports, it doesn't just have to be lacrosse, what's the biggest lesson you've learned through sports that you've been able to implement into your life?
So, so I have two. Um, sorry, that's a very diplomatic way to answer. I have two. Um, the the first one is, as you've mentioned, it just comes down to people relation, I would say. Um, as much as I've been a leader in different situations, in my, my stint as an athlete, I have been led as well. You have to learn how to lead and be led. If you don't learn both, you're not as complete as a person, and you're not as complete of a teammate or in the workforce, a coworker or a partner, et cetera, et cetera. Even in a relationship, you're not as complete of a partner if you don't know how to both lead and be led. So I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned. And then the second thing, as we've also touched on, being a late bloomer, being in positions where I didn't play much, patience. And patience goes a long way. Patience touches into the idea that it's not always going to be your time, and you have to have kind of grit and perseverance to be able to wait. But waiting doesn't mean sitting. Waiting means preparing yourself for the moment you get, preparing yourself to be ready when they call your number, preparing yourself to be the best you can be once you get in the situation. I would say that was the second biggest thing I learned as an athlete.
Two huge golden nuggets right there, and I appreciate that. It's good. Two is always better than one anyways. That's what I used to say in 3-on-3 basketball. 3-on-3
Yeah,
basketball, live and die by the 3, which is actually 2 in 3-on-3 basketball. So 2 is always better than 1. I appreciate
absolutely.
it. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Dami Ashaye, who joins the show. He's a senior lacrosse player at the College of Idaho. We wish you the best, man, and we just want to say thank you once again for joining the Gametime Guru podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a blast. This was awesome.
It was absolutely fantastic. And for all the listeners out there, don't forget, you guys can find my show on any of the podcast platforms. That's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, doesn't matter. Find it on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Subscribe. We'll be coming to you every single Friday with a new episode. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.